Murphy-Droomer is my name, and I want to warmly welcome you to this interview in the series that is all about unleashing the audacious woman within. Today, we have with us Elle Russ. Elle is a best-selling author of the Paleothyroid Solution, which has helped thousands of people across the world reclaim their health. She is also a TV and film writer, the host of 2 podcasts, The Primal Blueprint and A Kick-Ass Life. And most recently, she has written a book called Confident as F.K. So there is likely to be the odd swear word come up in this interview. So please take this opportunity to pop in some headphones if necessary. We are going to dive into a conversation that is all things confidence building, and I am certain a whole lot of health as well. Enjoy. Welcome, Elle, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So for those in our audience that haven't had the pleasure of meeting you yet, would you give us a little background into who you are and how you came to be doing the work that you do now?
Sure. Well, frankly, all of it was accidental, never planned. And some of the best things in life are unplanned. Yeah. It's that old quote, like, God laughs when you make plans kind of thing. So, long story short, but I was in the corporate world at a very young age, out of college, and I was with a very fast growing company. And so I ended up getting promoted. And the next thing you know, I am 22 years old. I am making 6 figures, and I am managing like 100 men throughout California, working for 5 Fortune 500 companies. And I have this, corner office with view, and I'm wearing Armani suits. And I mean, I am just rolling. And at that time, I had initially, my plan was after college was, I'm going to go to law school because I like it and I want to make money, and I know the benchmarks. You become partner and I know how much money that makes. And I'm just going to go make money and be a partner of a law firm. And then I'll never have to worry about money. And that's what I'm going to do. Well, then I got this intermediate job while I was waiting for law school applications, and I started to make more money than a starting attorney. And I was like, well, wait a minute, I'm not going to go back and spend $100,000 on law school when I'm already making over $100,000 a year, right? And my trajectory was that I was 22 at the time. My next promotion was for $250,000. I would have been retired by the time I was 35 with like 5 Porsches in the driveway. I was stoked until one day my arm stopped working. And I suffered a hand injury. I have a hand disability. I still have it to this day. The California court rated me at a 40% disability. And so here I am. I'm at the prime of my life. I'm more successful than anyone that even just graduated with me. People are like, oh my God, check her out, right? I'm so excited. And then my arm stopped working. And that was a horrible, horrible thing to happen, because there is not one job in this world that you do not need to use your hands repetitively for 8 hours a day, unless you are an actor, a public speaker, or a translator, or, a radio show host or something like that. And this was, like 22 years ago or something like that. And so I'm sitting there in the dust going, oh my God, what am I going to do? Like my life and career just ended, and it just started. Oh my God. And so very depressed. I have a book I have a chapter. I wrote 2 books, The Paleothyroid Solution. And then my second book is called Confident as F, or F-U*K. I won't say the name. We'll keep it Disney friendly. And I have a chapter in there called Shame Disables Confidence, because that started a whole thing as an alpha female at the time, being like, oh my God, I'm disabled. Who's going to want me? Who's going to want me? I can't even lift a fork to my mouth. I can't wipe myself without pain. What guy is going to want me? I wouldn't choose a dude that had dead freaking arms at the age of 22. I'd be like, no, thanks. So I can't be hypocritical. Why would anyone want me? So that's the first real serious source of shame and embarrassment and feeling less than that I had. And it crippled me for a couple of decades until I dealt with it. So that's one part of my story. Then I'm going through the motions. I'm like, okay, well, now I need to use my voice. And you don't just show up at a network and are like, hey, I'm disabled, but I can only use my voice. Will you hire me to be a news anchor? That just doesn't happen, right? And there are very few mapped out benchmarks in the creative industry. So I just had to be like, all right. I went and did, comedy training at the Second City in Chicago, which is very famous. I got my voiceover demo done. I was like, I'll do whatever. And at the time, there was no such thing as a podcast. Do you know what I mean? There was none of this stuff where I could just kind of do it myself. So I went down that road and I worked and worked. As I'm doing this, I get hypothyroidism. So twice in my life, I get hit with 2 things that are seemingly the worst things that could ever happen to me. they become the best thing that ever happened to me. And that's why I always say gifts come wrapped in shit. You just have to wait a minute. And so then I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm getting hit with this now. And then with that situation, 99% of doctors all over the world, and I speak to people in Australia, Saudi Arabia, Brazil, it doesn't matter. It's the same story. Doctors are uninformed and they know nothing about this. So I had to literally, I live in Los Angeles. I went to over 24 endocrinologists, doctors. I went to famous celebrities who wrote book on hormones, and I went to their doctors. Yeah. Nobody figured it out. They all hurt me. No one could help me. No one tested me right. So I actually had to become my own doctor and do it myself. And so I resolved 2 bouts of serious hypothyroidism in 10 years. One was a reverse T3 problem, and did this myself. And then eventually got to the point where I wrote a book on it, because, you know, people would come up to me all over the world and I wouldn't even bring it up. Like, I'd be on a hike in Hawaii and talking to some chicks, and then someone mentions they have a thyroid problem. And I'm like, oh my God, here we go. And the next thing you know, I'm like, all right, what test, you know, and I'm like coaching and helping them through it. And so finally, then I wrote a book, and it's, you know, it's a best-selling book, and I help people all over the world. And every day I suffered is worth it, now that I can help people get from A to Z faster, man. It totally was. And so those are the 2 major things in my life. Now I'll stop there and see where we want to go from here. But
yeah, look, I mean, there's so much there. And what I'm hearing is this, you know, where we are right now with COVID. I mean, there's so many things happening across the world, and it is, you know, like, maybe this is going to be the best thing that ever happened to us. You know,
absolutely.
It's, you know, there is so much possibility coming out the other side of this. And, you know, we hear, as much as we look for evidence of things that are true, there is so much evidence in the journeys that we take. And when we're in these really hard times, the good stuff is coming out the other end. I talk about childbirth. You know, it is intensely painful, and there's fear and worry and concern, but look what you get out the other side. And, you know, we can have these experiences with illness, of course, and then, you know, going on and teaching people. So that then took you on this path. Please keep going.
Well, and so then I end up becoming like the 5th person in the world certified in paleo nutrition. And, you know, next thing you know, I'm Mark Sisson, the New York Times bestselling author of The Primal Blueprint and CEO of Primal Kitchen Foods, who published my first book. He got too busy with his company and said, hey, take over my podcast. So now I have a voice platform, right? And, you know, and I get interviewed all the time, like on things like this or other areas. And so I've been able to, again, roll into something where I can use my voice. I also dictate a lot of things. Like, so when I write my book, I dictate and then go back and handwrite it. The confidence thing came out of this. So I've always been super confident, but confident people have a lot of pitfalls. I'll get into that in a minute. The other thing is that I was confident in all these areas, but I told you about this horrible shame that I carried about my disability, because I have something you can't see. And so when you have something you can't see, number one, people aren't as empathetic because they don't understand it. And sometimes they question you because they don't believe it. Yeah. So you just never even want that. So after that happens, a lot of times you just go, you know what? I'm just going to shut up. It's not worth it. I don't want to go through the whole thing. The second thing is that because you can't see it, you can hide it. So because I live like a normal person, like I can play a game of ping pong with you, not every damn day, all day long, but like I can do normal things where you wouldn't know that I had an issue. And so I didn't tell anyone that I dated about this horrible shame and the story of mine and what this was like for me. And so here's the thing. You can be confident in all these areas, but if you're shuffling under the rug, some shame about something over here, it's going to disable other areas of your life. In my life, it disabled and really impeded my romantic relationships because I couldn't be vulnerable and open about this thing about me. I was always waiting like, well, hopefully they'll say I love you and then I'll feel safe. Okay, did that whole game. That was a fail. And then I also lost out on probably some really great close friendships because I didn't want anyone to get too close to me other than the select group of people that were my close friends that knew about it. Yeah. Because if they got closer to me, then I'd have to tell them like the story, you know, people would be like, oh, she doesn't have to work because I got a long-term disability policy. Now, granted, it was only like $40,000 a year. So it's like preschool teacher salary in California with heavy taxes. So living, you know, paycheck to paycheck, I'm not like driving a Bentley at this time, but you know, so then it's the embarrassment of being like the word disability. And then people are thinking that, oh, now they're paying for it out of their taxes, which they aren't. It's a private policy. And again, you get into all this stuff. And I was so young when I get disabled that if I told people the story, they'd be like, oh man, that's so cool. Like if I were you, I'd be in Beijing one week and Paris the next. And I was like, oh shit. And then I'd get remarks like, I remember many, many years ago, one of my roommates, I was asking them if they could do something at a certain time on a certain day, like to get together. And they made a snide remark like, yeah, well, some of us have to work.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, bitch, you want to trade arms with me? Do you want to trade arms with me right now? Because I will take your arms. I am ready. You want this? Go for it. Yeah. And so when you get little remarks like that over time, or you get people questioning, you just start to go, you know what? It's not worth it. And as an alpha female who's very confident, this was the most horrific thing that could happen to me, right? A weakness, like a literal disability, you know, alphas don't want to show weaknesses. So here's the thing. I've been confident forever. And throughout my whole life, people have always come to me to be like, what do I say to this bully? What's my comeback to this bitchy mom I'm dealing with? How do I go ask my boss for a raise? And I noticed that people were coming to me for this. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, here's what happens is that sounds a little bit like I'm standing on the oracle and I'm this, you know, but they taught me a lot about what I was missing, because people who are less confident, even though they have to work on speaking up and work on self-worth and all that stuff, oftentimes they are more vulnerable. They're more able to receive. They accept help. They are also more diplomatic. They are not quick to speak. Part of that could be because of a confidence issue, but it's also more diplomatic. So a lot of, so my book is for people that need confidence and also highly confident people that need to refine that shit, because there is a lot to refine there. And so it's symbiotic relationship. Those people really taught me like what I needed to learn. And so that's why, you know, I decided to write a book about it. It was both of my books I was compelled to write. You know, I don't write or do anything because I think it's going to make money, or think it's because I am compelled to get the message out. And everyone would come to me and they'd be like, I wish I had your confidence. And I was like, all right, this is a theme. This is a theme. So yeah, so that's where my second book came in.
Yeah. So when did the last book come out? It's fairly brand new, isn't it?
Yeah, it's actually only a year ago, but then the pandemic hit, like, you know, January, February. It came out like last November. Yeah. Okay. So it's been out for a minute, and yeah, it's really fun. So much great feedback, so many fun interviews about it, because this really is one of my favorite topics, and it's attainable for everyone. And this is what everyone needs to know. I don't care if you're out there listening and you are debilitatingly shy, because I have a friend who literally could not speak to a Starbucks barista, could not talk to an employee at a store, that debilitating shy, just literally had his first friend when he was 35 years old. This is how shy this guy was. And so even if you are at ground zero with confidence, you can hire a social coach, which is what he did, who took him out and helped him form conversations with like the employees at stores, because they're likely going to be nice to everybody, right? You know what I mean? I mean, they're not going to like be crappy to some customer. And slowly over time, if you met this guy now, you would not even believe he ever suffered an issue with shyness. People are blown away when he tells them that, because he's the most outgoing guy you've ever met in your life. He walks up and talks to people everywhere. He literally is just blossoming. So even if you're at ground zero, it can happen. Most people aren't at ground zero. They're at a point where they just wish they could have a little bit more. And I really like this one quote that I found about shyness, which obviously is a not confident position, which is that shyness has a strange element of narcissism. It's the belief that somehow how we look, how we perform is truly important to other people. It's kind of harsh, but it's true. And so the other thing that people need to know is that, you know, confidence is not like a fixed anchored quality. Your levels of confidence are always the sum of the thoughts you think and the actions you take. So it's not even necessarily reflective of your actual capacity to succeed at something, but more reflective of your belief in your ability to prevail in life and at a thing. And if I could put a blanket thing over confidence, I would say that's what it is. It's your belief that can be generated and fostered that you will prevail. And anybody can attain this. And it's really important. And why? Because guess what? Confident people get all the prizes. They get all the prizes. Everybody wants to be around confident people. Number one, it's attractive. Number two, we are authentic. We tell it like it is. Everybody loves that. Authenticity reigns supreme. period. We also see challenges and things like that, not as obstacles, but as like learning experiences. Also, confident people are nice and encourage other people. So if you're dealing with some B in your office who's a CEO and she's a B running around, no, that's an insecure, over alphaed, uncoached, just using her confidence as dominance. That's a bully. Okay. Yeah. And often like I was a little bit of a bully when I was a kid. And oftentimes, I mean, that can be from trauma, but also it's like a misplaced use of this confidence. You know what I mean? It's like, and confident and bullies will seek out people who aren't confident. They will seek them out. You will be just a target. Yeah. And so, you know, this is just so classic that this always happens. And it's amazing. I've seen it change so much. And so again, confidence really provides this, it also provides this evolutionary edge of sorts, because it helps us navigate, you know, challenges, tasks, social situations without pause, without anxiety. Okay. Like someone asked me one time, and I put this in the book, I had a woman who did my facials. And again, because I'm confident, I often attract people who need confidence. So I read, this is the story of my life. And so she obviously was one of those people, and we had gotten to know each other over time. And when I came in for a facial one day, she said, you know, I was thinking about you recently. She said, every time I go to a party or a restaurant, like I feel so awkward. I feel like everyone's looking at me. I'm so like self-conscious and insecure. And she said, and I had this thought where I was like, I wonder how Elle feels. I bet she doesn't feel like that. I wonder what Elle feels like when she walks into a place. And without hesitating, I said, I walk into every place like I own that mother effer. And let me clarify that, because that can sound like really cocky. When I walk into a place, I don't give a crap whether you ask me one question about myself. I don't care if anyone knows I'm an author or whether anyone knows my resume. I don't care if anyone even talks to me. I'm there to observe. I'm comfortable in my own skin. I'm fine talking to people or not. I'm not there to prove anything. I don't care. And I want that for everybody, to walk in this world comfortable in their skin and their body, health-wise, but also comfortable in who they are. You know, confidence is also not loud. Like, obviously, I'm an outspoken person. I'm a public speaker. That is not confidence. That is performance confidence. Anybody can do that, okay? Anybody can learn that, even if you're really nervous. There's people that speak on stage to 50,000 people. They get off the stage. They can't have a conversation with their neighbor. They can't ask for the raise. They can't. That's not confidence. So when I say confident as F, I mean inside and out, right? So that's really a different. Also, some of the most confident people are the quietest people in the room. In fact, more often than not. Yeah. So I've seen this example many times. So one of my best friends is like this, and I could just see it. Like, he'd be at a party probably, and I'm in the corner, just standing around, looking around. And I bet you that people would be like, oh, that poor guy over there. Yeah. No, not that poor guy. Yeah. He's comfortable in his own damn skin, hanging out there in the corner, just checking people out. Yeah. Don't feel sorry for him. He's confident. Okay. So now also too, you can be confident in, like your ability, like for example, I overheard a PhD who's very smart, and she was talking to someone. She goes, here's the thing. The problem is like, I really know my stuff. I just have trouble with confidence. So she's confident in her knowledge, right? But she is not confident in getting it out there. Well, what good is that? If you're an artist and you got paintings at home, you think someone's going to come to your house and knock on your freaking door? No, you got to go sell yourself. That's what this world is about. It's self-selling. You can't get a job without telling the employer what your top qualities are, that why they would want you. You know what I mean? You're going to have to get this. So you need it everywhere. It doesn't matter if you're a stay-at-home mom. This is not about being a badass CEO or author or like public speaker. Like, that's cool. If you want that, you can get it. You're going to need confidence if you're a stay-at-home mom. You're dealing with other people's parents. There's shit that goes down. Like, you have to have some uncomfortable conversations probably with someone or a teacher, and you're going to need that. So, you know, from the bedroom to the boardroom, you're not going to get what you want in life unless you're confident. And so that I'll kind of stop there, and I've got plenty of stories and ways I can go here. I just don't want to, make it a lecture, but
no, let me know. It's all coming out. All the things that I wanted to ask you, it's just coming out. So I think that, you talked before about confidence is belief and taking action. Was that what I'm just trying to remember? Yeah. So
it's your belief in the ability to prevail, and it's the sum of your thoughts and the actions you take. Yeah.
Yeah. And it doesn't come without action. That was the bit that I really wanted to anchor in for people. We can't wait for confidence to arrive. It doesn't arrive without taking the action. Yes. That to turn on the video for the first time and show up and do an interview. The first few, it's always
always awkward.
the confidence comes as you take action. So I think that's, I just wanted that to anchor in for people. You talk about the downer effect as well. Tell us more about that.
Well, I go through the book and I talk about, it's basically, the book is about scraping the barnacles off parts of your life so that you can gather and muster up and, adopt that self-esteem and self-love so that you can be confident. And so it's not a book about tips and tricks and blah, blah, blah. That's not going to help anybody. They're about relatable real life stories I've been through or coach clients on that when you read it, you're going to go, okay, I get it. So one of the things we talk about, and, maybe I'll start here. I'll get into the downer effect, but let me touch on parental garbage first, because that's kind of precedes it almost. So everybody has some element of like parental garbage. You had a teacher who told you you'd be nothing. Maybe you had a parent that said you were dumb, whatever, some labels upon you. Let me tell you a very nuanced, seemingly innocuous story that really affected someone's confidence in their career. So this is the story of Brandon. Now, Brandon is about 45 years old, but Brandon, for the past 2 decades, always was on jobs with patronizing managers and bosses. And this is how it would go. Something would go wrong on the project. They were a contractor. They would get blamed and chastised in front of the whole group by this nasty bully, of a boss. And I was just like, this kept happening. And so finally I was like, Brandon, why does everything go wrong and you get blamed for it? Like, that just doesn't happen to people that I know. What's going on there? I'm like, what happened at home when you were growing up? Did you get blamed for stuff a lot? Like, what happened? Well, oh my gosh, here it comes. So Brandon grew up in a middle-class family. No one was beaten or molested. Everyone had got food and education. So good standard of living, but the dad was a little bit of a hothead. So if he lost something, like one time, let's say he misplaced the hammer, and then he'd blame Brandon, like, where's the hammer? I know you stole it. I know you're hiding it. Where is it? And Brandon would be like, I didn't freaking take it. I don't know. And then his dad would find the hammer and never apologize. Okay. And this would kind of happen a few times. So what do you think the parental garbage story Brandon adopted? Being wrong in the face of an authority figure. Yeah. So then I was like, oh, well, okay, this makes total sense. Let's unravel that. So then he had worked with this one boss and jobs were slim and he needed to work with this patronizing guy where everything always went wrong. And I said, well, here's the thing. It's going to happen again. Like, we know that something's going to go, like, you're going to get blamed. You're going to get yelled at. So what are you going to do the next time this happens? So what we did is work with Brandon to increase the confidence well, the first thing he was going to do is be prepared to be fired just in case. So look, yeah, if you got a mortgage to pay and food on the table, you need to think about these things first, but you have to be ready to walk away because you might get fired in that moment. Who knows? Doesn't mean you can't contest it. It just means that might be the case. So he had to kind of prepare financially and mentally that this could happen. And then finally, Brandon, I said, okay, so you need to say something to the effect of, when the guy yells at you in front of everybody and he's totally patronizing, embarrassing you, you need to say something like, hey, I am not going to be spoken to like that. And if you don't speak to me in a professional tone, I'm walking off this job right now. And it was tough because here's the thing, like you said, it's never comfortable the first time. Sometimes it's not comfortable the 10th time. It gets more comfortable though. Okay. So mustered up the courage. Of course it happened again. And Brandon did say that to him. And what happened is what happens almost every time. Yeah. The guy shut down because bullies do not like to be confronted. They have no idea what to do with it. And they are acquiescent. And he was like, oh, I'm sorry. And apologized and whatever. Okay. Now, once you tackle a challenge like that, that's been a theme for you, right? Like, you keep getting bullied, you finally speak up, and you finally do that. Okay, that's great. That helped. And what happened from there on out is what happens for everyone. First of all, my view is that when you do a pro-you move like that, like this guy was getting patronized and shit on. He finally stood up for himself, right? It was a very primal thing and very important to increase self-confidence. So he stood up, he spoke up. Now, the prize is that I'm not shocked that every single new contractor that came in and he got new bosses, the jobs all went smooth. People would even email him after the job. Oh my God, so great working with you. Amazing. Brandon's calling me like, can you believe this? I'm like, yeah, I freaking can believe it. This is exactly what happens. And then I said, beware though, you're going to get a tester. So if you've got a long-standing thing like that, you stand up, you are going to get a test from the universe that said, did you learn this freaking lesson? Did you really learn it? And so it happened again. And I got to tell you, I wish I could bottle the confidence that Brandon had, because when he called me after like this happened and I just said, and God, the feeling is just so like, you just wish you could bottle it and give it to people.
Yeah.
And then of course him sitting there going, God, I wish I had adopted this philosophy all these years ago. Now, Brandon, it's been like, I don't know, maybe 7 years since we've had this conversation, and every job is awesome. Everything's awesome. But even in his personal life, if there's like a bullyish type of friend or someone who's barreling over, he's like, nope, he's not a people pleaser anymore. He's like, nope, cancel. So again, where do you have some things like that in your life that are affecting your life now? How do you know what keeps happening to you that sucks? Yeah. What do you not like to keep? God, this always happens, right? Like I always keep, meeting cheaters, or I always keep getting fired, or, okay, well, yeah, there you go. We got to look at that. Okay. Yeah. Because that's where that is. Now let's move into downers. So the other thing too, is that I'm down with OPC, which is other people's confidence. You can't be bagging and downering people in their dreams and expect yours to be coming true. And so there are so many examples of the downer effect. The most innocuous one is, a real simple one. Like, let's say you pick up a friend from the airport, and we've all had this happen, and you're like, how was your trip? And then they go into this whole airport story, like, well, then they lost my bag, and then I had to go here, and then the steward, right? And there's like a whole freaking story. And usually if like a friend would start that on me, I would look at them and go, are you really gonna tell me your airport story? Really? You're gonna really tell me your airport story? That's just a downer. Like, if it's not necessary, then leave it. Leave it, because now you just brought me into your airport story. Guess who won that day? The airport. Got your shit all in a bunch. So where are we being downers? That's a simple one with just water cooler talk. Like, hey, oh my God, did you hear, Edwina, that like 50 people got murdered yesterday? And oh my God, like, so don't be that guy. Don't be that person. The other downer effect, which is, I'll give two. One was where I was a downer. And this is a really good example, because we all have had this kind of thought. I have a friend who's 40 years old, and she's never had health insurance. Now, in our country, in the US, this is something that almost everyone has in case of emergency, because we don't have standardized healthcare. So it's like if you fall off a cliff or something, so that's why we have it. It's in case of an emergency, and of course, checkups. Now, I have been raised my whole life to like, you don't ever walk out the door without insurance. You don't know what could happen. I'm also the beneficiary of insurance, right, with my disability. So I know how important this is. And she tells me that she's never had insurance, like, since high school. And she goes, I guess, and gets Planned Parenthood checkups for women stuff every year, but like never has done nothing. And I am like going nuts, and I'm talking to her on the phone, and I said, this is so stupid. Like, how can you do, like, you have to do that? And she said, Elle, I do not have the same philosophy about health that you do. I just don't think that way. I'm fine with my health, and I'm not worried about it. And I'm like, but that's just so dumb. Like, and I'm just trying to convince her. She's like, I just don't have the same view of health that you do. And, frankly, I have to accept that. That's true. Like, her belief system is totally different. So we get off the phone. I'm really frustrated because I'm just thinking, just so dumb. And I say to myself, like, watch, something will happen. She'll see. Yeah. Hold on a minute. What? Let's unpack that. Watch, she'll see. In order for me to be right about her having insurance, my friend has to A, get a medical problem. Do I want that for my best friend? No. 2, it has to be so bad that it financially screws her so that my point about insurance is made. Right. Do I want that for my friend? So how many freaking downer thoughts are you out there thinking like that? And we all know when they're happening. And here's how you identify it. Because it's after the phone call. I didn't feel good. I'm angry, right? I'm in the mood of, it's usually when we're trying to be right that those kind of things happen. Like, yeah, good luck with that. You say that one next time, you better catch yourself. Saying good luck with that, or even inside is like going, good luck, can't wait for you to fail. It's hoping for someone else's failure. Yeah. That's what that is. Yeah. So stop being a downer. And then the other hand too, get rid of downers. You keep telling your sister Mary about all your dreams and your new business plans, and she keeps telling you're stupid and ridiculous. Stop talking to Mary, man. Get rid of these downers. She's not going to change, man. Mary's always been like this. I know you want her to. We all want her to. I've been trying for 20 years to get a family member to respond in a certain way. Guess what? You're the insane person if you keep going to Mary, and then she's going to downer on you. And here's the thing. People are going to project a lack of confidence onto you, whether you like it or not. So what are you going to do about it? Ways to avoid that? Don't be telling your, $1 million dreams to $100 people. I think that was a Steve Harvey quote. You know, and stop hanging out with negative, toxic people.
Yeah.
If you think that your girlfriends or your friends are jealous of you, guess what they are? They're out. They're out. I will not hang out with someone who I sense is jealous of me. Confident people are not jealous or envious. Jealousy always backfires on the person that's jealous. Jealousy is essentially, envy is, oh, I want what you want. Jealousy is a feeling of, it's so unfair that they got this thing that I want. I hope they fail at it. That's really what that is. Yeah. So we have to stop this. Yeah. Confident people are not jealous. They don't compete with people. I don't compete with anybody because you lose. What do I mean by that? Well, Elle, if you're in a race, you have to compete with other people. Of course, no, because here's why. If I'm in a race with you and 3 other girls, I'm just thinking about winning. I'm just like, oh, I'm going to dominate this thing. I'm going to kill it. I'm going to win. I'm going to be number 1. Yeah. I'm not going, I'm going to kick her ass. I'm going to beat these bees. That is really, my end result then is reveling in your failure versus just me being number 1. There's a different vibrational baseline there. Okay. So here's another downer effect. I had a client who was very busy. She had an assistant she loved. She was in a really busy time and he gave his 2-week notice to leave the job because he was going to another company where he was going to have her job. So like a big promotion for him. She calls me and she's so upset. And she's just like, I can't believe this. Like, oh my God, good luck with that. He can manage a small group of people. There's no way he's going to handle this. I mean, watch, he'll be coming back begging for his job in no time. And I was like, wait a minute though. I thought you liked this guy. No, I do. Well, what? You want him to be so mortified, embarrassed, crawling on his hands and knees back to you because he failed? Why wouldn't you want him to succeed? Like, I'm like, you're just an ego now because you're feeling that primal threat that you're busy and someone's bailing on you. But do you really want to put out those freaking vibes? Now, people listening might be like, well, what does it matter? It's just a thought in her head. She didn't tell the guy. It matters. You and I and everyone know that when we're around people, we know who's in our corner. We know who's rolling their eyes. We know that vibration. Energy does not lie. So we turned it around. Of course, by the end of the conversation, it was like, oh my God, no, of course I want him to succeed. I go, what if he goes to that company and he kills it and he becomes a superstar? Like, wouldn't you be stoked for him? She's like, no, you're right. I am. I go, yeah. You just, again, we all do that. We all have these moments and you just got to process it because the truth of her statement is literally like hoping for his failure. He's so embarrassed that he has to come back and oh my God, right? So why is that better? Because those last 2 weeks, her vibration as she walked into the office is one of support, is one of encouragement, and is one of like hoping that he succeeds, not this other vibration that would have been a really crappy departure between 2 people that loved working with each other. So where are you being a downer? And who are the downers around you? It needs to end because that will just chump in and chisel away at your confidence. And so, confident people really encourage other people's success because they don't have a feeling of lack. So for example, I am known in my industry as being a super connector. I connect so many people with each other. I help people succeed out of nowhere, just out of the kindness of my heart, because I love watching people succeed and I love helping others. If someone came to me and they were like, I want to be a writer, I want to be a podcaster, my first thought is not, oh my God, they may get more followers or downloads than me. Oh my God. Like, I don't care because there's no lack of abundance to me. So I'm just like, of course, let me tell you everything I know. I'll help you. And one of the things we have to get straight, and my mother was like this, and I learned it from her because she never competed with other women and she never had nasty, gossipy scenarios with girlfriends, is this has to stop with women. Okay, like this has to stop. I mean, in my country, we got like a million shows with a bunch of ex-housewives yelling at each other, causing fights, all this cat shit. It has to end. Women have to be pro-women. And if you're a confident woman, you're going to help other women. So I just don't hang out with those people anymore who I sense that are jealous or competitive with me. If you don't think someone's in your favor, I'm telling you, they're not. They are not in your favor. Do you really want to be hanging out with those people? I hang out and have friends who, when I call them and I'm excited about something, they're like cheerleading me. They're proud of me. Do you know what I mean? And so that's really why, again, it's we don't have a lack of abundance mindset and we're not competing with you. We're just competing to be the best. There's such a different vibration there.
It's contagious. it's contagious, that positivity is contagious, that, you know, like it is being around people that are like that. We shift into that energy, you know, you get pulled into that energy, so we can be a source for that. But similarly, that negativity and the downer conversation, it's, you know, like that's why it's a great idea to leave the news off at the moment. So
and I say to anyone if you're dealing especially with any kind of health issue,
yeah,
you have to get rid of all dramas.
yeah,
Don't be watching any Law and Orders with people getting murdered and raped. Don't be watching psychological thrillers. Don't be watching horror films. You watch comedy all the time. Like,
yeah,
that's what you watch. Comedy, romantic comedies, things that are heartwarming, Hallmark movies,
yeah,
whatever. You
yeah,
have to do it. You have
yeah.
to.
Stuff that makes you laugh is good.
Absolutely. It's healing. And again, it's so important.
Yeah. With, you know, looking at all the bits that you've talked about so far, I'm just seeing the most powerful class for our girls to be having in about, you know, year 9, 10, that 13, 14. You know, nobody's there. So we were so concerned about what everybody's thinking. What are we wearing? Our hair, you know, like, but everybody's so concerned about what they look like. No one's actually noticing what you look like when you walk in the room. That confidence and the language that I want to use is responsibility versus a victim. So the story that you told about the man dealing with a bully boss, it's about taking responsibility rather than being a victim. And, you know, we can look at this in every area of our life.
Well, you know, I have a section in my book called Your Victim Application Has Been Denied.
Yep.
And I want to tell you how that got brought up. So, I mean, there's lots of stories here, but I was at a gathering and there was a 50-year-old woman there. And there's a bunch of people. And you could tell that she was feeling insecure and embarrassed about her status in life. You know, she didn't have a lot of money. She was broke. She was kind of whatever. She considered herself a loser. Maybe other people would too, whatever. But you could tell that she was not feeling good about it and had to justify it. So she kind of went into this thing where she was like, you know, if only my mother had like pushed me harder and disciplined more, then I might be somewhere, but you know, I'm not and literally just blaming her mother. And I said, I'm sorry, you're 50. I go, okay, so what age were you when you realized that your mother, maybe she sucked, like she wasn't the best, or that, you know, she didn't encourage you? Like what age were you when you finally was like, damn it, you know, my mom? And she goes, I don't know, maybe I was like 30. And I said, okay, so you've had 20 freaking damn years. Nope. Sorry. Parent yourself. It's really hard to hear, and it's true. And let me get into that. There's no one watching this has ever had a thought that isn't about them. People would say, well, hold on, that's not true. I was thinking about my friend Mary who's in the hospital and I went and brought her flower because that made you feel good. Again, it's always back to you. There is nothing in this world that's not really about you and how you think and feel, even if it's altruistic, even if it's nice, right? But you're doing it because it makes you feel good. Again, it goes back to you. And the same thing goes here with confidence. No one's going to lift you up. You got to do this yourself. If you're waiting for somebody to lift you up or do anything for you, you're wrong. And the same goes for health. This is one of the biggest messages that I give when I talk about thyroid on interviews is that no one cares more about your health than you, not your doctor. I don't care if he's got a Harvard degree or not. If someone diagnosed you with something, you better become an expert. You better learn that because you are going to get chumped. You're going to get 5 steps behind. Someone with a Harvard degree, that doesn't mean they know jack, dude. I've seen it across the board. So again, what is that? It's powerlessness. It's like, help me. Here's my stuff. You're a doctor. You're supposed to help me, right? So nobody is going to encourage you. And if your parents didn't, then you better. Because here's the thing. Are you going to let that effer win? Are you going to let that abusive parent win? Because that's what you just did. You allowed their opinion of you to change your opinion of you. That is crazy. And when you see that, you start to go, okay, this is coming from me. Like, I got to generate this. No one's going to do this for you. No one's going to do this for you.
Somebody said that to me years ago, and it was just, you know, you hear these statements that just are life-changing. And somebody said, we're teaching our kids to parent themselves, you know, to become your own parent as they leave home, not being dependent on everybody else's opinions, thoughts, and ideas, but to take responsibility for that themselves. And just understanding that little one-liner changed the way I parented completely.
I can see it.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
The other thing I want to get into is something I call non-versations. A non-versation is a conversation that goes nowhere.
Yeah.
And so we got to stop having them, and we got to stop instigating them. And it's tough. So what's an example of a conversation? A perfect example, social media. The people that got on and they're like, you're wrong, and fighting over politics or whatever, vegan versus paleo, I don't care what the like conflict is. Okay. Here's why that's a bunch of BS and why it's a conversation. Because anyone, like, for example, I have a friend that is exactly the opposite spectrum of politics and stuff with me. And so I instigated a lot of conversations before I realized this was just a waste of time. But here's what it is. It's bullshit. And I'll tell you why it's bullshit. Because when people are going on there and they're writing things like that, or they're arguing with someone else, they are not actually open to a philosophical debate about that topic. They're just there to go, you're stupid, you're wrong, and I want to change your mind. Well, guess what? There's nothing on certain political, social points that you could ever argue that would change my mind. So it would be really dumb for you to start a conversation for me on, I don't know, legalizing marijuana, whatever. And for other people, I won't mention extreme examples, but there's really nothing you could say that would change my mind on this. It would be a non-versation. And I wouldn't even really be open to having too much of a conversation with you about it, because I'm settled in that, and I live in a state where it's legal. So that's, again, it's like, what's your why there? You're going on there to do what? To make someone feel stupid. That's what you're doing. You're just bullying. That's all you're doing. Believe me. Look, I wish, and I'm sure you do too, there's moments where you're on social media and you're just like, you're typing a response and then you're like, what? No, I'm not.
Delete.
And that's what I call be careful on the send. We've all had that contentious email or that text, sleep on it, right? Wait. Posts are there forever. Every employer will see every post you've ever made. So, and I was talking, so funny, because I was talking with my mother's friends when I was visiting them, and they're all 75 years old. And they're sitting there talking about all these arguments they're getting on in politics with all their friends on Facebook. And I'm like, why are you guys having a bunch of conversations? This is ridiculous. I go, because you know they're not going to change your mind, and you won't even hear them. You don't even want to hear what they have to say. So you're just being an a-hole by saying you're wrong, you're stupid, and you're trying to publicly shame them. I'm sorry, but that's just such downer vibes. It's going to get nowhere but backfire on your ass, and you got to stop it. So stop having conversations and stop instigating them. Sometimes I even have to catch myself, especially with my friend who believes differently politically from me. Like I'll text something, but shit, like what, try to backtrack on it, because again, it's natural to want to get into it, but again, like, avoid them. And the same goes for people that are annoying to you. Like if it's a family member, for example, I have a family member that says really illogical stuff, like just randomly illogical. Like you could prove it in a proof. You could say that doesn't make any sense. And for years, when they would say something illogical, I would be like, no, that's not right. Because and it was just like more insane. They'd say more illogical stuff. It was kind of like gaslighting. And then we'd get into it. Next thing you know, my blood pressure is raised, my cortisol's up. And then it was just like, what am I doing? So A, they're not going to change. And B, what am I doing? So now what do? I don't care if I were around them and they started to say something illogical, I just go, interesting, never thought about that. Or just leave it. Just leave it. Because it's a non-versation. It's going nowhere. You cannot logicalize with someone that has no logic.
It goes back to the conversation that you were having with your girlfriend about the insurance. We have this burning desire to be right and to prove that we're right. And it's okay just to let it go. We can have different opinions.
We can all have different opinions. And one of the things that people trust confident people. So again, and also I used to be an employer and hire people. Employers would rather hire a person who's confident than actually someone who's skilled in a thing. Because confident people will step up, they're proactive, they're usually on time, they're on top of it, they're creative, they think outside the box, they're not afraid to take chances and just kind of run with it. And that is something an employer wants in somebody versus someone who's maybe just skilled but doesn't have confidence. So again, it's really applicable to like every area of your life, you know what I mean? And the other thing too is that I want to talk about like faith, because I don't believe in a God. I believe in the universe. I have a spiritual practice, and we could say universe, God, whatever. But if you are religious and you're watching this and you don't have confidence, then you don't have faith. And you got to check yourself. You got to go to your God and go to your religion for that, because in your religion, most religions, whatever God you want to call it, God loves you unconditionally, believes in you, got your back, thinks you're awesome, thinks you can do anything.
Yeah.
So why don't you? You're just giving the middle finger to your God.
Yeah.
You're going to church every week. What are you doing? Just sitting there for service because you think that's going to, no, like embrace it. Help it make you more confident.
Yeah.
You kind of can't have faith in a God if you don't have confidence, because
Yeah.
you just don't have faith in that then. And so get with your faith and use that to increase your confidence. That's the thing for people out there that are religious and don't have confidence. I was coaching a woman one time who, with thyroid, and she was very negative about the whole thing. Every coach says negative, never gonna get better, just complaining all the time. And I had an inkling that she was an older woman. She was like 70 years old. And I had an inkling, and she was living in Alabama. And I was like, she's probably going to church every Sunday, right? And so I said, hey, are you religious by any chance? Do you go to church? Oh, yes. Oh, every Sunday. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I go, well, doesn't seem like you have a lot of faith. Doesn't seem like you have a lot of faith, because every time we talk, you're just thinking God's going to fail you.
Yeah.
So you got to get in there and embrace that, because otherwise it's just showing up for a thing to what? Put a check on the mark, or to your community. Look at me. I'm so religious and devout. I'm showing up to church. That's BS, man. Jesus, your God, whoever, they wouldn't want that. Don't show up there unless you mean it. Don't show up there to just for appearances only. You know what I mean? Appearances always fail. And also too, then you're not really getting the most out of your time in the church with the God. Like, get in there with it, man. Like, reread the Bible, get some counseling with your priest or rabbi or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because so really you can use your faith in whatever religion it is to also increase your confidence.
Yeah. I think it's, I won't try and quote it. People can look it up. But Brene Brown's definition of faith is magic. It's beautiful. So I think if we can, we're getting close to time, but there's one more subject that I would love to touch on, which is health, and how, I think it's a particularly relevant, I mean, it's always a relevant conversation, but with everything that's going on across the globe right now with COVID, we can't have confidence without our health. So where do you start with that and tying those two together?
Well, there's a couple different things here. So let's say you feel horrible. There's people that are confident that are obese, like they may be uncomfortable in their own skin, but they're confident. But I would argue that they're probably not confident in all areas of their life because of that thing, because they know they don't feel good in their own body. So that's the area that they have to work on. So you can be outwardly confident, or, and not be comfortable in your own skin. But here's the thing, because the way that we eat and what's happening with cortisol and our blood glucose and all of these systems in our bodies really affects all the neurotransmitters, the happy chemicals, and all that stuff. So if you got energy all day long and you're happy and you're a good mood, versus being a sugar burning, carbohydrate dependent person where you eat a meal, 4 hours later, you're like, oh my God, I'm hangry. Now you're nasty people. You can't think straight. You're not going to be able to be a high achiever if your mind isn't in the right space. So it doesn't even matter about weight, because there can be actually heavy people out there that have fantastic blood work and they're riding high, and they're even living a low carb life. They just might be eating too much fat, and that's why they're still fat. That's okay. I'd rather have that scenario than someone who's a carbohydrate sugar burner who's got extra weight on them, because that is the sleepy, the cranky. Again, it's just not optimal for your brain. So I always recommend a paleo primal ancestral paradigm, because it is literally what our DNA as humans expect of us. And if you're going to do something else, you need to modify it in case you need nutrients and stuff. So optimizing nutrients. So in the time of COVID, what can you do to improve your immune system? Well, right now you got to go, if you're like in bad shape and you're like, oh my God, I'm insulin resistant or whatever, you need to get insulin sensitive. We know for sure that the comorbidities with COVID-19 are obesity and insulin resistance. There are a lot of people out there that have no idea they're headed towards type 2 any day now. I was pre-diabetic at some point, and you would not have been able to tell. There are athletes that are pre-diabetic that look awesome. And so the exterior looks great, but guess what? They're not getting away with it on the back end. On the back end, there's inflammation, and you know what? They're going to be a target for when COVID hits them. So if you want to protect yourself or make yourself have a better outcome if in the event that you get this thing, what do? Well, I always recommend, and a lot of doctors do at this point, heavy vitamin D, at least 5,000 IUs a day of vitamin D. Doesn't matter how much you're in the sun. Selenium can really help as well. And also there's other things, like there's a product called Viracid, which is a sort of antiviral type of immune protector that in the event you had to take a plane ride or something like that, there's a immune boosting protocol that my doctor, middlepathmedicine.com, has on there. And it's a combination of like, if you feel like you're getting sick, you would take massive amounts of vitamin D and C and this other product, Viracid, for like 3 days in a row and just knock it. So but really it's diet. So you don't have to give up bacon burgers, man. I eat pulled pork, beef ribs constantly. I'm eating bacon all the time. I just don't eat a lot of carbohydrates. Yeah. So what does that mean for most people in this world? You could always go to Mark's Daily Apple and look this up. There's so much free information about paleo primal health. It's not just a food list though, but essentially you start here. Nobody in this world, unless you are a professional athlete. I don't mean you work out 2 or 3 hours a day. I mean, you're a professional athlete working out 8 hours a day. Unless you are a professional athlete in training, nobody should be consuming more than 150 grams of total carbohydrates a day, period. The reason we have this epidemic in our entire world with, especially the US, with type 2 diabetes is because people gave it to themselves. Unbeknownst to them or not, they did. They gave it to themselves. Type 2 diabetes is something that's your fault. Not blaming, I was almost pre-diabetic, but it is. It's something we do to ourselves. So we can only control it. It's also low carb life is the only way to reverse type 2. It can get people off of insulin. I just had a friend's father who lost all of the toes on his foot to type 2 diabetes because he couldn't stop eating crap. They did an intervention. They got him on low carb. His HbA1c, which is a big marker for diabetes, went down from like 10 to 7 within just 1 month, and it should go down to 5.2. If anyone's curious about it, it's called hemoglobin A1c. It's a 3-month glucose tolerance test. It should be 5.2 or below. If it's 5.4, that might be like, all right, look at the carbs. But when it starts to hit 5.7, pre-diabetes, it hits 6, you're at type 2 diabetes. You can reverse it. The only thing that reverses diabetes is that. Not type 1 diabetes, that's an autoimmune form of diabetes. I'm talking about type 2, which is the major epidemic in our world right now. So those are the people that are dropping like flies with COVID for a reason, because it's a state of inflammation. So their body's already inflamed. Now there's this other threat that just came in that's another inflammatory thing. The immune system is not geared to handle that. The other thing everyone can do is don't have to go work out and do cardio and all this stuff, but if you could do weight-bearing activity, lifting weights and getting to that contributes to organ reserve. So that if you are in the hospital and then you get the pneumonia or whatever it is, your lungs are going to be able to expel because they've been challenged. These parts of our bodies they'll give up if you don't put demand on them, right? So that's why bone density will go away if you don't do weight bearing stuff, because the bones are like, well, we don't have to work that hard. And then if you're not using, you're not getting your heart rate up, they're like, well, the lungs don't have to work that hard. So if you take a vacation on your body, it's going to take a vacation on you in the worst scenario. Now, that's not to say that healthy people aren't dying of COVID-19, but I'm just saying, if you want a best chance at this, at prevention, at getting a very mild case, and at surviving at the very, at the max, I would really look into that. So vitamin D, optimizing nutrients, work with a health coach, work with a primal health coach. There's so many out there. You can go to the Primal Health Coach Institute. There's thousands now at this point. And get yourself a coach to help you get back into health. It doesn't mean not eating things you don't love. I eat amazing stuff. It's just that the bad sugar, the crappy stuff, look, heavy whipping cream whipped up into whipped cream with some fruit is delicious. No one's going to deny that. Okay, you can still eat stuff like that, but put down the Snickers. Like you're killing yourself, right? So just do our best. If you can only be 80-20, that's better than most of the world. But you have to start getting towards insulin sensitivity, being a fat burner, not a sugar burner. What does that mean? That means our bodies actually really prefer to be fueled off of ketones and fat, not a lot of glucose, and our bodies can only store so much at the same time. So it's really about going down this path, and I map it out in my Paleo Thyroid Solution, but it's everywhere online for free, so anyone can access this type of information. The best book on it, I would say, would be Mark Sisson's book called The Primal Blueprint, and it is in its 4th edition. If you can't afford to buy the book, that's cool. I am the host of the Primal Blueprint podcast. We have over 440 episodes. Those old ones are archived, but if you Google Primal Blueprint Podcast, episode number 1, listen to 1 through 15. It's Mark and Brad Kearns, New York Times bestsellers of the Keto Reset Diet and Keto for Life, talking about what paleo primal living means and what that activity looks like. And I'll tell you what it is. It looks like it's very chill. It's more chill than being a sugar burner. When you're a sugar burner, you got to work out a lot to burn all this glucose you stored. And then you burn it off, and now you're going to crave it again. You don't want that. So It's also the only thing that I've ever seen any paradigm that has completely eliminated food addictions. I was absolutely food obsessed, even when I was, in shape before hypothyroidism hit. I mean, I'm in shape now, but like before, before anything ever hit me, I was on the wrong paradigm. And I was like, thinking about food all the time. I thought I had to go to like Overeaters Anonymous. I was like, are other people hiding this and they're struggling too? And this is because obviously I'm fit. So this is obviously the way to do it, but this can't be it because it's horrible. And I literally thought I was cursed for life. I was like, I don't know, man, am I going to live the rest of my life always thinking about food every couple hours and like making deals in my head and like, for what I'm going to eat later because I just ate this? Stressful. And it doesn't matter if you're 400 pounds or you're 115. Sugar addiction is brutal, and it is a mental hell that I am so glad I'm out of. I almost rarely think about food, and when I do, it's not like, oh my God, I'm going to murder somebody if I don't eat right now. I'm hungry. Let me get. It's more like, oh yeah, I'm starting to feel like I'm going to probably need some food soon. It's just super chill, and I have energy all day long. Let me explain something. When you're eating every 4 hours and you're on this sugar burning, horrible old paradigm that everyone says, eat 5 meals a day. Wrong. Don't do it. It's the worst. Every time you do that, when your blood sugar drops after 4 hours, your cortisol responds. It doesn't like these dips, doesn't like it. It wants it to be steady. And so if you're a fat burner, you could go right now and not eat for 24 hours and not have one hangry meltdown, be able to work out and lift weights, not be tired, not exhausted. When you're a sugar burner, you can't do that. You cannot do that. You will be like, at hour 6, hour 8, you'll be like, oh my God. The only time you'll start to be okay is maybe 2 days later when finally your body is using the fat off your body to fuel itself. And now you're like, oh my God, I feel great. That's why when people do fast for a couple of days, you're like, oh man, the third day, yeah, it was because your body was using the fat off of your body to fuel itself, and it prefers that.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to this, obviously,
but
I know. That's just sort of a little bit of an intro, and I'm happy to clear up anything about this. But again, going low carb, that doesn't necessarily mean keto. You might have to if you've got a metabolic disorder like type 2 diabetes or something. But in general, it's like, think about staying between 80 and 150 of total grams of carbohydrate. If you're a short woman like me, I'm 5'2", 150 grams would be a little bit too much. Not every day for sure. I might do it one day though, and that's fine because I'm metabolically flexible. So I'm not affected by like a high carb day or a low carb day or whatever. But it usually takes about 1 month or 21 days to make this transformation, to flip these genetic switches in your body that are like, oh, thanks, I'm unaddicted to glucose now. I'll start using fat to fuel myself. So 21 days to a month of just willpower on food. You don't even have to work out at all. You could sit on your couch and get fat adapted. That's what we call it, getting fat adapted, being a fat burner, not a sugar burner. You could sit on your couch and all it is a willpower. So there's no excuses. Don't tell me you can't go to the gym. I don't hear it. Not an excuse. All you have to do is get the willpower for 1 month. Then you don't need the willpower after that because the switches have flipped. And all of a sudden you'll have a day where you're like, oh my God, it's 3 o'clock. I didn't even think about food. Holy hell. How is this? Hallelujah. Like, it's the best thing in the world to this day. On Mark's Daily Apple, we have a success story like every single Friday. And the thoroughfare of every single success story is they might have lost 100 pounds, they might have cured their skin disease, but the ultimate is, thank God I don't think about food anymore. I'm not obsessed. This addiction is gone. So if you're in that phase right now, that's not you inherently, like I once thought I was cursed and it was me and oh well. No, you did it to yourself. You didn't know better. Now you know better. Undo it.
Undo it. It is like a morphine hit, isn't it? That endless carbohydrate, it just be so addictive. So addictive. I know you've got a
so destructive too. It's really destructive for the human body and immune and anti-aging. You want to look at the rest of your life? Look, I hope people are watching this and see me. I'm 47 years old. Are you kidding me? Come on. Give me some
48.
Right. Like, and people are like, what? I thought you were 35 or I'm like, yeah, because it's being carbohydrate dependent is accelerated glycation. And that breaks down so many things from your body, including collagen and everything else. So if you want to look good and also live the longest and have a great life with energy and, mobility for the rest of your life, like, get on the ancestral train. There's a reason. Paleo-primal ancestral is not a gimmick. It is literally based on 2.5 million years of us of evolution of us as human beings. And the problems that came into being for humans did not happen until about 10,000 years ago when we started to settle down and the agricultural revolution happened. It's the first time in the world that paleontologists saw rheumatoid arthritis on the archaeological record. Meaning if they looked at a sample of something, right, they know it's a cow, they know it's that. There's the first time they saw that. I'm not surprised because grains trigger the antibodies for rheumatoid arthritis and also lupus and also MS and also Hashimoto's, okay? They're contributed to all of it. So people think that the whole grain-free thing or whatever was, it's a gimmick, that's weird. No, it's not. It's absolutely rooted in science and rooted in, again, what our DNA, our primal blueprint has prescribed for us. No one ever cooks up a chicken and feeds it to a horse. You don't do that. That's mean because they've got their own set of DNA that expects that from them. And a cow DNA expects them to graze on cellulose all day long. They have 4 stomachs. We can't do that. But guess what? What happens when you feed a cow grains, their non-native diet? They get sick. What happens then? You have to administer antibiotics. That's why when you look at a package of meat, when you see it says no antibiotics ever, you're like, well, why would you even why would you? That's why. That's why. Yeah. Cows that are allowed to roam and be pastured and live their native diet of grass, they're healthy. They don't get sick. They have an immune system. And the same goes for us.
Yeah. I know you've got the perfect gift to wrap up this conversation for our audience. Would you tell them just for a minute what that is?
Sure. So I've been working, Mark Sisson is really the grandfather of paleo primal and everything else. And with his book, The Primal Blueprint, many years ago, and I've been hosting his podcast for years, and he's been very generous to allow me to give you guys his book, Primal Blueprint, Healthy Sauces, Toppings, and Dressings. And now he does have the company Primal Kitchen. You can go out and buy a lot of these things. And, it's an amazing company now. There's hundreds of products. And if anyone does go to primalkitchen.com, you can get 10% off by just putting in the code KICKASSLIFE, which is the name of a podcast I also host. But basically what it is, and here's why. The things that make food taste good are the sauces and toppings and dressings. But everything in the store, other than Primal Kitchen Foods products now, are filled with soy and canola. Even if it says Newman's dressing, olive oil, and vinegar, look at the back. There's freaking soy in there. There's soy in there. So this is about, look, no one's ever even had a bowl of oatmeal by itself. You put butter on there, you put right? So these are the things that really dress up and make things delicious. And so this is a book that's all about the healthy ways to make those at home. And so make your own mayo, all sorts of different toppings and saucings that are healthy, paleo primal approved, no offensive oils or anything like that. So that's the gift.
Absolutely perfect. This has been such a fantastic conversation, Elle. Thank you so much. There's so many pieces in here, confidence and health. We can just dive on in. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's really fun.
Oh my goodness. Look at all the beautiful threads that Elle has pulled together when it comes to looking at building confidence. Which little thread are you going to grab hold of and start to pull on? Because any of these pieces is going to start you on your journey to more confidence. So what did I love? I loved when she talked about responsibility. The story that she shared about the man who had a bully for a boss. We can look at that in any area of our lives. It may be a relationship with a parent. It may be a relationship with a spouse. It may be somebody you work with, a friend. The possibilities are quite broad. But where is it in your life where you perhaps stay quiet or take a back seat or allow somebody to speak to you in a way that is not respectful? And I think that this is, it is uncomfortable, but it's an opportunity to look at it and go, okay, so am I going to choose to be a victim here, or am I going to choose to take responsibility for being the woman that I want to be in the world? And yes, we're going to trip over our tongue. Yes, it's going to feel uncomfortable. However, it all gets easier with practice. Within our Facebook group, it is an opportunity to say, look, this is a situation that I'm dealing with. I need some support, and let us be the courage beneath you, the wind beneath your wings that gives you the courage to take responsibility for how you choose to be spoken to in the world. All right, that's it from me today. So much love, and bye for now.